Well, good morning, folks. This is Jim Hodgson. I'm here with Garry Goff at the First Flight Park in Fort Worth, and we are live for our On the Road event. We're going to talk about First Flight. We're going to talk about the Blériot 11, and as many of you know, we have had issues with sound. Garry, say hi to everybody this morning.
Hi, guys.
So we think we have our sound system all figured out, and I'm going to tell you what that was all about. Because as it turned out, it wasn't us. It was Apple, and it was Facebook. But we've got a solution going on here right now.
Or at least we think we do.
At least we think we do. And we have no viewers right now. So I'm wondering if we should just shut down and restart. Oh, no, here we go. We got Juan Gutierrez has just showed up. Juan,
Hi,
welcome.
Juan.
So what we're going to do here today is we're going to talk a little bit about First Flight Park and the significance of this park and this Blériot 11 that you see up above. And we're going to go from there and tell you why it's important here in Fort Worth. So, Garry, why don't you talk about the airplane a little bit?
Well, the first thing is that Blériot made his money to being the first ever designer of a headlamp for an automobile. So think about it. He is the guy who invented basically the headlights that we have on our automobiles today. He's the first guy to invent it. And he made so much money doing that he got real interested in aviation and decided to make an aviation corporation. So he started building airplanes until finally he gets to this version right here, which is the 11, the Blériot 11. Very easy to construct, take apart, put back together again. You can see the box design. It's just really simple. But what made him even more famous than just being an automobile headlight inventor is that he is the first person to cross the English Channel in an aircraft. And he won 1,000 pounds for it, and I don't know what that's worth today. But this was in a little bit before 1911, like 1909, I think it is. So just a couple of years after the Wright brothers flew. Anyway, he takes off, and it's fascinating. He's doing 40 miles an hour, and he's going to use a ship that is in the English Channel as his guide to cross the channel to go over to England. However, because he didn't have a compass, they didn't have compasses back then for airplanes. So as he's approaching the ship that's in the water that's going to help him navigate, he quickly bypasses the ship, and now he's out over the water and he can't see anything. He's 250 feet above the water. He enters in kind of a fog bankish type thing, and he remarks that he can't see anything. All he sees is water, and that's it. So imagine you're the first person to enter into an area over the water where you can't see anything. Fortunately, the weather clears a little bit, and he picks up the cliffs, the Dover, and he notices that he's much further off course because the winds had increased and had blown him off course. He changes headings, goes to point toward this castle in Dover, and he hard lands, impacts, kind of damages the airplane a little bit. It took him, I think I read it was 35 minutes to cross the English Channel in an airplane, which now is minutes, maybe a couple minutes. But anyway, this airplane becomes super famous because of it. Excuse me. And it is all over the world. And what makes it important is that's how it gets here to Fort Worth. And Jim's got that story.
Well, we're going to walk around the airplane here and let you see it a little bit. First of all, how's the sound? If the sound is good, just give us a thumbs up. Because we think we've got the system figured out now. We found out Apple and Facebook were working against us. They didn't know that, but they were. So the design of the Blériot 11 was a very, very successful design. It was, in addition to going across the English Channel, it won all kinds of contests for flying around the Statue of Liberty, speed, altitude, all of those kinds of things. And that's one of the reasons that the flying circuses used the Blériot 11. Had about a 40 horsepower engine on it, and then I think they increased it to about an 80 or 85. But this airplane on the stick here was built by our friend Lanny Parcells at Cowtown Aerocrafters. And he said it was one of the toughest airplanes he's ever had because he had to build it not to fly. And it does rotate in the wind. We've got no wind here today, but I know if you go online, you're going to be able to see videos of this airplane moving around. It's been called the largest weather vane in Texas. And it is an exact replica of a Blériot 11. So while we're here and we're at this spot, we're going to talk a little bit about first flight here. And if you guys can hear, if you could give me a thumbs up, I would appreciate that. A thumbs up or a like or something anyway, so I know that that we're getting through to y'all. So across the street from here, back in 1911, when the first flight actually took place here, was referred to as a driving park. It was a horse track. Horse tracks back in those days were often used for aviation events because there was a long, flat place where they could land and take off that was somewhat unobstructed and somewhat prepared. Keep in mind there were no real airfields at that point in time. And so they'd show up in trains. These were flying circuses. This is the group that came here was John B. Moissant's International Aviators. They came here with a group of people that had been flying in Europe. In fact, aviation was much bigger in Europe before it got big here. And so this flying circuses traveled around the country and introduced aviation to the United States. Even though the Wright brothers had flown earlier, most of the advances in aviation took place in Europe for a while. So Curtiss had a flying circus, the Wrights had a flying circus, and this was John B. Moissant's. And his intent was that he knew that there were going to be challenges in aviation and the development of aviation, and knew that by traveling the country and inspiring people that it might develop an interest in aviation, and somebody might be able to solve some of those problems that they had. So they came here after they had been in New Orleans actually in December of 1910. And in fact, these airplanes and all of the airplanes at that point in time were being involved in a number of different kinds of competitions. How high they could go, how fast they could go, how quickly they could get around a course, all kinds of different things. And while they were in New Orleans, John decided that he was going to attempt to do a speed and altitude record in the Blériot 11, an airplane called number 21. And he was actually killed in that airplane in New Orleans, and that's how the New Orleans airport got its name as Moissant International Airport. It's named after John Moissant. After they left New Orleans, they came to Houston, and then from Houston they came up to Dallas. And while they were in Dallas, a number of the local businessmen got together to pay came up with the money to pay the appearance fee for them to come here to Fort Worth. Well, they got here in Fort Worth for January 12th and 13th.
And it's cold.
And it's cold, and it's windy.
Yeah.
And these people are here to fly, and they've paid their money to see this. In fact, the schools shut down. All of the streetcars all just came over to this area. They built up stands inside the driving park, additional stands.
And the businessmen gave all their employees a half a day off so they could come.
This was huge. The whole deal. It was just a big deal.
Huge.
Now, that was also one of the first fallacies of air shows, is that you don't have to pay to go inside of an area to see an air show. Because we're relatively certain people stood on the ground that we're on today and watched these first flights. So what took place that day is it was windy and it was cold, and it just the event was not taking place. John Frisbee, and that's the name you know. If you look at some of the early pictures, you will see kites flying around the air shows, and that was intentional because the kites were sent up so that the aviators could get an idea of what the winds were doing up above. And some of the kites are referred to as man lifters. John Frisbee, for instance, had spent almost 26 years as a balloonist and operating man-lifting kites and being a parachutist in Europe before he came here. A number of the other aviators that came along, a gentleman named Hamilton, I forget his first name, but he was referred to as the Flying Fool. A lot of these people were all just considered daredevils.
Yeah.
Roland Garros was part of the group, and he was known for flying the Damsel, which is a little small airplane. Well, Edward Audemars had been attempting to fly it all day, and it was just too windy. And the little Damsel would just kind of bounce along the ground, but it wouldn't get off the ground. Now, Blériot at the time, or not Blériot, but Roland Garros at the time was a Damsel pilot, but he was learning to fly the Blériot, but he had not yet fully finished his training. But in his famous words were, I think I will fly, and his other guy said, well, you're nuts, you're crazy, it's too dangerous
nuts
to do that. What we don't often find out is that his full comment was, if we're going to get paid, I think I will fly. And so Blériot took off, hit a wind gust just as he was taking off, and scared the crowd, scared him, and he managed to get up above the stadium, and he flew around Fort Worth for about 20 minutes and came back and landed.
And Garros became very famous later on in World War I as an ace.
Yes.
So this guy is a true aviator, a true pioneer in flying airplanes.
So that's what took place here, and it was right across the street. Well, several years ago for the centennial, we decided that we wanted to do some things here locally, and we wanted to look at having a Texas historical marker put in place. And I'm going to go down and show everybody that. So when you do a Texas historical marker, you have to have a location where that's going to be, and you also have to have permission of the owners to put that in place. Well, we came over here and found vacant property, which we'd learned had been donated to the city back in the 40s, but had never been used for its designated purpose. And its designated purpose was that it was supposed to be a park. It had been donated to the city for that purpose, but it hadn't gotten around to making a park out of it, mainly because a main water main for the city was right underneath this property. So at any rate, we started talking to people about First Flight Park and designating it with this historical marker, and then we got the idea of raising money and putting in an airplane replica. So the city worked with us. They finally decided it was a good idea because there are no aviation markers here locally. So the city worked with us on this and worked with the developers and helped put this park in. And a number of other people also helped with this, and I'm going to show you that. One person in particular that I want to recognize while we're here is Jerry Knatzer. Jerry helped us with constructing of the concrete here. He also helped us putting up the airplane, and so part of this was done in loving memory of Jeff Knatzer from the Jeff Knatzer Foundation. But these are some of the people who were important, and here's a picture of that day, right here, the day the first flight took place. Now, right there in the middle, the little short individual is Roland Garros, and the person on his right is John Frisbee, and the person to the left is the manager, and it's probably a little bit difficult to see here, but this is aircraft number 21 that flew here. That's the
actual photograph.
Yeah, that's the actual photograph from that day, and this was the same airplane that John Moisant was killed in. Some interesting side notes to all of this is after they left here, they went to Waco. And after Waco, they went to, I believe, San Antonio, and eventually they made their way to El Paso. In El Paso, something very interesting happened. In El Paso, the Mexican government asked them if they would fly into Mexico and essentially do a reconnaissance looking for Pancho Villa.
So think about it. This is an aircraft that a foreign government, is going to ask a pilot to fly, and what's the first mission that they're going to fly? It is aerial reconnaissance. So that's what got aviation such a big deal in warfare, is the fact that it can fly over bad guy territory and find out where they are. So recce pilots and recce aircraft are critical for just everything in combat. Now it's done by satellites, But back in the day when Jim and I were flying, it was the recce guys that went out and found who's where. So here they are, the Mexican government. I need to find. Were they looking for Pancho?
Pancho Villa.
They're looking for Pancho Villa. And they're going to hire a guy to go fly and find him.
And so that was the first time that we know of that an airplane was used for military purposes. It was not the first time the military used an airplane for military purposes. That was actually in Tunisia, and that was done during the Tunisian-Italian conflict, where airplanes were used for observation, and then with a few days later they were used for bombing missions.
That's a stretch, calling a hand grenade.
A hand grenade. They were dropping hand grenades on Oasis.
Not like what we're thinking about.
So at any rate, this is where some of the real beginning of it. It's where the beginning of aviation here in Fort Worth took place. Is right across the street from this location. We feel very fortunate and very humble in some respects that we had the honor of helping make this happen. And this is the only really visible mark that there is here in Fort Worth regarding,
or in Dallas,
regarding aviation's history here.
Yeah.
Dallas doesn't have much either, other than Love Field.
But not an actual replica aircraft thingy.
Not like this. Not like this. This is kind of a one and only. So at any rate, what's going to happen here is we celebrate what we refer to as First Flight Day here on a weekend closest to January 12th each year, and we do that by recognizing people who have had some significant contribution made to aviation. Whoops, flashing around here. Significant contributions to aviation. We call it our Wings Awards, and so we are going to be doing that again this year, although it's going to be a virtual event where it's usually a luncheon type of an arrangement. But this year it's going to be virtual. We haven't announced the winners yet, but we will be doing that soon. So while we're here, and I've still got a couple of people on, if you've got any questions, ask away, please. We're hoping that the sound came through okay today, although I didn't get any indications from anybody. We'll be checking that after we're done. But hopefully this is a better experience for y'all. And if anybody's got any questions, please ask now. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I think what we're going to do here from First Flight Park, this is Jim Hodgson and Garry Goff with the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home of the most touchable warbirds in Texas, and we will be doing something this coming Wednesday, and hopefully if we've got our sound system fixed, we can do some more things that'll be a little bit more of interest, and maybe go back and redo some of the older ones.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So y'all have a good weekend, stay safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
See ya.